This tutorial is for clue 4 of the Connote pattern by Janica Carter, which is the 2025 year-long mystery crochet along pattern from Expression Fiber Arts. As with all my other videos, there are timestamps down in the video description, so you can jump to the parts you want to watch, skip the parts you don't want to watch. As I mentioned in the clue 3 video, I'm no longer going to be demonstrating with the cash silk sock. I figure at this point the whole purpose of the video, the tutorial, is so that you can see the stitches, and it's really hard to see on such a small with this small yarn. So I do have my sample here showing how clue 4 works on my short little swatch of cash silk sock. So basically when we work clue 4, we're, instead of working back and forth across the rows, we're actually going to begin working at a diagonal we're first going to create this little edge wedge. Okay, so we're going to work across a couple of stitches and then turn and work back, and then work across a couple of more stitches and turn and work back. And each time we're increasing the number of stitches that we have at the edge here and decreasing the stitches over here. So when we work a decrease, we're actually working from our wedge to our ending row of clue 3 and then anchoring the next stitch. So we're anchoring to clue 3 with the single crochet decrease and then one more single crochet, and then working another row of the wedge and increasing at the edge of that wedge as we go along. So increasing over here, decreasing over here, and anchoring to the top of clue 3 over here. And once we get our full height of our wedge, then we'll begin working diagonally back and forth. You get these nice little ridges. It's a little textural element by working in the back loop as you're working toward the top of clue 3. And then again, you're still anchoring. So as you're working toward clue 3, you're anchoring here and then anchoring the next row, technically at the end of the row that's worked toward. You work an anchor stitch from the wedge to the top of clue 3 and then one more stitch, and then you work back to the top. And then once we've completed this wedge, once we have our full width of our wedge, by working the increases over here, we're just going to be working the same number of stitches back and forth. But because we're including a stitch, we're kind of adding a stitch here, we're taking away a stitch here by working, when we start on the top end here and work this way, we're going to skip the first stitch each time. So we skip a stitch here, and then to get the same number of stitches, we're going to work an extra stitch here, which will anchor it to the top of clue 3, and then we'll work back. So we'll do that all the way across. And then when we work our final wedge strip with our color D, so actually color C ends when you work that final ridge of color C before you get to the end. So we'll work one more ridge of color D and anchor it and work back, and then we'll start doing a decrease. So that final, when we start doing the decrease, we'll get into that final stitch of the top of clue 3. So that beginning of the wedge is anchored here at the end, and then we decrease the wedge going back and forth here. And then to finish off the clue, when we get to this final decrease, we're going to work all the way back. You're just going to single crochet across the top of this edge. So you're going to have to kind of work into the edge stitches there to get back to the same number of stitches that you had. So we're going to cover all this in detail using the Dewy DK yarn. I've linked it in the pattern description. I'm not going to demonstrate it. It's just kind of ancillary to this. One of these days I'll make my own video, but there are plenty of great videos out there. So there's a way to work what's called the golden loop. So when you make a stitch, so before I'll do this real quick. I'll just demonstrate. So when you make a stitch, when you go into your stitch, you yarn over, you pull up a loop. Where you pull this loop to is going to change the height of your stitch. So there are some people are called yankers, so they'll like yank the stitch down tighter so that your hook almost ends up at a tilt with the handle higher than the head. And so when they yank that stitch tight, it makes a lower, a smaller crochet stitch. Whether you're making a single crochet or a half double crochet or a double crochet or triple crochet, whatever your stitch is, if you yank that loop after you pull it through, so you have your loop here, you insert your hook into the stitch to make the stitch, and when you yarn over it, when you pull through, if you yank that stitch tight, you're going to have a shorter stitch. So that would be a yanker. A lifter is somebody who, when they yarn over, they insert their hook in, yarn over, pull through, they lift that loop up to make the stitch, and so it makes a taller stitch. There's also crocheters called riders. That's what I do, where the hook is basically parallel to the top of the work when you've pulled that stitch through. So if your hook is diagonal at where the head is higher than the shaft, then you're probably a lifter. If your hook is diagonal, so the head is lower than the shaft, you're probably a yanker. And if your crochet hook is parallel to your work, you're probably a rider. So how you work that golden loop is also going to be important for this clue. Because we're working at an angle, the number of stitches that we work down here is going to be the same as the number of stitches that we're working into. Okay, so we have the same number of stitches along the bottom edge that we're working into the top of clue 3 here. But if your stitch height is tall, you're going to end up with a piece that is wider this way, so kind of like at this angle. It's going to end up wider toward this side than your previous clue is. That's if you're a lifter. If you're a yanker, your clue 4 may end up not being as wide as it needs to be, especially when you compare it to your clue 3. If you are a rider, it should be pretty much even. Now, it will feel like it's leaning, okay? This is something that's going to block out in the end. But you should have a fairly rectangular piece when you're done. So if your stitches seem like they're getting too wide, and you're not really problem is you're not really going to know until you get all the way across to the end whether or not you're taking up too much space. So gosh, I don't know exactly how to advise you. I hate to tell you do the whole thing and then rip it out if it's wrong. Just kind of pay attention to how you're working your stitches. If when you pull through that first loop, when you do the first yarn over and pull through, just make sure that you're not yanking that loop down, that you're not lifting that loop up, that you're just kind of riding along the top of your work as you're making those stitches. So, but I started to say it and then I didn't finish. I did link to a specific video that demonstrates the way to work the golden loop in more detail. I did link to a video about that. So if you want to use that, you totally can. All right. So clue 4. At the end of clue 4, you should have cut, broken, finished, fastened off, however you want to say it, your color B. So you just have your color C here, and we are eventually going to join our color D. But we're actually going to start by working this first wedge. We're going to create this beginning wedge with our color C. So to start out, on the right side of your work, you're going to go ahead and do your chain 1. If you are at the back, then turn, but your chain 1, and then you're just going to work a single crochet in each of the first 2 stitches. So, oops, try that again. Single crochet in the first stitch, single crochet in the second stitch, and that's it. We're just working into those first 2 stitches at the top of clue 3, and then we are going to go to row 2. So we'll work a chain 1, and then we'll turn to the back, and then we are going to work a single crochet in the first stitch here, and we're going to work 2 single crochets in the second stitch. So 1 and 2. All right, so row 3, we work a chain 1, we turn back to the front. Then in our first stitch, we are going to work 2 single crochets again. So single crochet in the first stitch once, single crochet in the first stitch twice. Then we're going to knit in the next stitch, and then we are going to anchor this wedge we're creating. You can see it's kind of starting to make a wedge. We're going to work a single crochet decrease. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Oops, get all the way into that stitch. There we go. And then insert your hook again into the next stitch on the end. So this row 3 is what we're going to be working into. We're going to go into that next stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Then we're going to secure that by working 1 more single crochet in the top of clue 3, or the top of the last row of clue 3. All right, so then for row 4, we chain 1. We're going to turn back to the back, and we're going to work a single crochet in each stitch until we get to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in this last stitch we're going to work 2 single crochets. So that would be 5 and 6 that go into that last stitch. So you should have 6 stitches now. You should be able to clearly see this little wedge forming at the edge of your work. All right, so row 5, chain 1, turn back to the front. We're going to again work 2 single crochets in the first stitch. 1, 2. Then we're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3. Oops. Try that again. 2, 3, 4. And then in this last stitch of your wedge, you're going to be working a single crochet decrease to connect this last stitch of your wedge and the next stitch in the top of clue 3. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then insert your hook again into the stitch on the top of clue 3, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. And then we're going to work 1 more anchor stitch in the top of clue 3. All right, so now at the end of row 5, you should have a total of 8 stitches, and this nice little wedge you should have used up 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top of your clue 3 stitches. All right, so the stitches that you're using up, the number of stitches you use up is always going to correspond to your row number on the wrong side. So once you've turned to begin working the next row, so we'll start to work row 6, and we will have used up 6 stitches from the top of clue 3. All right, so chain 1, turn to work clue 6 or row 6, turn to work row 6. So single crochet in each stitch until we get to the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then in this last stitch, we're going to work 2 stitches. So 2 single crochets, 1, 2, for a total of 9 stitches. Okay. So once you work a wrong side row, it will look as if your wedge is kind of hanging slightly above your top row of clue 3 like you'll have a little gap here, but each time you work a even or an odd numbered row, a right side row, you're going to connect and cover that gap. All right, so row 7, do a chain 1, turn to the front. We're again going to work 2 single crochets in the first stitch. 1, 2, oops, maybe. And then one single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, goodness. I think my tension might be a little tight today. 6, 7. And then for this next stitch, we're going to do a single crochet decrease. So into the last stitch on our wedge, yarn over and pull through a loop, and then into the next stitch on the top row of clue 3, yarn over and pull through a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and then work one more single crochet into that top row of clue 3, and that will anchor our next row. So row 8. Oh, at this point you should have a total of 11 stitches in your little wedge here. So then row 8, we'll do our chain 1, turn to the back, work a single crochet in each stitch until you get to the last stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then in this last stitch, we're going to work 2 stitches. So 11 and 12. All right, so this is what it should look like from the front. When you have finished row 8, you should have a total of 8 stitches from your top of clue 3 that you've worked into. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You should have a total of 12 stitches in your wedge. All right, row 9, so chain 1, turn to the front. Let's see, turn that the right way. All right, we're going to again work 2 single crochets in the first stitch. So 1, 2. Then we're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 10 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we're going to do the single crochet decrease again, this last stitch of the wedge with the next stitch on the top of clue 3. So into the last stitch of the wedge, yarn over, pull up a loop, into the next stitch on the top of clue 3, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3. And then we'll work one more single crochet in the top of clue 3, and that will anchor our next row. So that is the end of row 9. Should have a total of 14 stitches in your wedge here. All right, so row 10, chain 1, turn to the back, and we're going to work a single crochet in each stitch until the last one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and then in this last stitch we're going to do 2 stitches. So the first one we'll do 14, and then with 15 I'm actually going to join, I'm going to get my color D yarn, and I'm going to join that at the same time I work this last stitch. So this is the second stitch in that last, so we're going to work 2 single crochets in this last stitch. So I worked 1, and then I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to bring my color D over my hook with the tail to my left and the working yarn to my right. And then I'm going to yarn over with color C and pull through. And then I'm going to drop color C and pick up color D to do the final yarn over, pull through 2. So that just gives my tail a little bit of anchor at that edge, so that it's not, this stitch isn't quite so loose to the work. All right, so from here, we're actually going to begin, this is what it should look like when you get to the end of row 10. And from here, what we're going to do is we're going to begin working basically even. So we're going to be working at the same slope now. We're not going to increase this wedge anymore. It's going to stay at the same height that it is. And we're just going to be working back and forth. But as we work this direction, we're going to skip a stitch at this end and add a stitch at this end. So we're going to work the same slope, but we're going to be skipping a stitch here and adding a stitch here. So we'll anchor on the way, when we work this way on the right side, we'll skip the first stitch, work all the way to the end. We're going to anchor this stitch to the work with a single crochet decrease, and then we'll add a stitch over here to continue the same stitch count and anchor the next row to the top of row 3 or top of clue 3 again. So to work row 11, begin with your chain 1, turn to the front, and then we're going to skip this first stitch, and then we're going to begin working in the back loop only. So if you look at, if you've never worked in the back loop only of a stitch, normally when you work into a stitch, you would work underneath both bars of the stitch. Okay, so you have the top of the stitch has the bar that's closer to you and the bar that's further away from you. So instead of working underneath, instead of inserting our hook underneath both of those bars to make the stitch, we're only going to go under this back bar. Okay, so that's the back loop. You have the front loop, the back loop. So we're only going to work into the back loop, but we're going to skip that first stitch and then work into the back loop only of each of the next stitches until the last one of that wedge. Okay, so get 1, 2, and it may help to just kind of rotate your work towards you a little bit to get into just that back loop. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so we're going to work in the back loop only of those 13 stitches, and then we're going to do the single crochet 2 together. So we're going to go back to working into both loops. So go under both loops of the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then into your next stitch on the top of clue 3. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3, and then 1 more single crochet in that top row of clue 3. All right, so that's what you should have at the end, of row 11. You should see there's a little bit of a ridge here between the end of that wedge and this row that we just worked. All right, creates this little wedge, nice little textural element here. And then we'll work row 12, which is worked in both loops all the way back. So chain 1, turn to the back, and then work a single crochet in each stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So when you work into this, last stitch, you're actually going to switch back to your color C. So I'm going to, when I go into the stitch, I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch. I'm going to drape my color C over my hook from right to left, yarn over with color D and pull through, and then drop color D and switch to color C by doing the final yarn over, pull through 2. So it's just going to create a slightly tidier edge. It's going to look a little different than it does when you do that edge here, because you're bringing that across the top of the project. Basically, we're creating this edge now that we've finished making the wedge is going to create the top of the project, but it is still going to be slightly neater than having those loops at the edge. So totally your choice. We are going to work over that when we finish, like the very end, the last row of clue 4. We're going to work over that entire top edge. So if you just want to have the loops, you can totally do it that way. Just up to you. All right. So row 13. Start with chain 1, turn to the front, and we're going to work row 13, much like we did row 11. So we're going to skip the first stitch, and then we're going to single crochet in the back loop only of the next 13 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All right, and then we need to work the single crochet decrease. So we're going to go under both loops of the next stitch, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then into the next stitch on the top of row 3, or top of clue 3, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 3, and then a single crochet into the next stitch at the top of row 3. So you can always look for your clue or your color B when you're working that single crochet decrease. When you work that second part of the single crochet decrease, should be going into your color B, and the single crochet after that should be going into your color B. All right, row 14. So row 14 is basically the same as row 12. We're going to do a chain 1 and turn, work in each stitch, just single crochet in each stitch all the way back, changing to color D at the last stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then in this last stitch, again, I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to grab my color D. I'm going to bring it up and over the hook from right to left, and then do a yarn over, pull through with my color C, and then drop color C and do the final yarn over, pull through 2 with my color D. And that is what you should have. That's the back after you finish row 14. That's what it should look like on the front when you finished row 14. All right. So rows 15 through 108 are just a repeat of rows 11 through 14, with one more repeat of rows 11 and 12. But I am going to repeat rows 11 through 14 one more time for you. So row 11, chain 1, turn to the front, skip the first stitch, and then single crochet in the back loop only of the next 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Then we're going to work the single crochet decrease, and that goes under both loops, so into the next stitch, under both loops, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then into, so that's the last stitch on the wedge, and then into the next stitch at the top of clue 3, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 3, and then one more single crochet in the next stitch at the top of clue 3. And that is the end of row 11. Row 12, chain 1, turn to the back, and work a single crochet in each of the stitches, changing to your other color at the last stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and in this last stitch, which is 15, insert my hook, grab color C, bring it over the hook from right to left, yarn over with color D and pull through, and then drop color D and do a yarn over, pull through 2 with color C. All right, so that is the end of row 12. Row 13, chain 1, Turn to the front. And with your color C, you're going to skip the first stitch and then work in the back loop only of the next 13 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then to finish out the row, you're going to work the single crochet decrease. So insert your hook under both loops of the next stitch or the last stitch of the wedge, yarn over, pull through, and then insert your hook again into the next stitch that's at the top of clue 3, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 3, and then one more single crochet in the top of clue 3. And that's the end of row 13. And then row 14, chain 1, turn to the back. You're going to work a single crochet in each of the stitches, and you're going to switch to your color D again when you get to the last stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then on the last stitch, which is 15, I'm going to switch back to color D. So insert my hook, bring color D over the hook from right to left, yarn over with color C and pull through, drop color C, and then yarn over, pull through 2 with color D. All right, so that is row 14 after you've repeated it and what it looks like from the front. All right, so this is what it should look like after you've if you finished a repeat of the rows 11 through 14. So you've worked your wedge, you've worked row 11 and 12, 13 and 14, and then repeated 11 and 12 and 13 and 14. So you're just going to repeat 11 through 14 across until you get close to the end. You can keep track of your repeats if you want. So you've done it once, you're going to do this. After you do this, you're going to do it 23 more times. So you're going to do, this would be one repeat. You're going to do 22 more after that. And then you're going to have one more repeat of rows 11 and 12. So you're going to end on a color D stripe. Okay. So I'm going to meet you there. After you work that last color D stripe, that's where I'm going to pick up. Okay. So obviously you'll have quite a few more wedges here than I have. But when you have worked the total number of repeats of the two color wedges, you're going to work one final repeat of rows 11 and 12 with your color D. You're not going to change back to color C at the end of that row. So that's your row 108. When you finish that row, don't change back to your color C. As a matter of fact, at that point, you can actually cut color C. Because we're going to finish by working another wedge over here to kind of complete the rectangle. that we're going to fill in this gap right here by working a wedge on this side. So to kind of counteract or counter the wedge that we have over here. So we have another edge wedge to make, and we're going to do that with our color D. So get rid of color C so it's not in the way. All right, so row 109 is where you would be. You will have one edge stitch remaining at this point from your clue 3. The final stitch of the top of clue 3 is going to be the only stitch remaining at this point. And you're going to, so from the back, chain 1, turn to the front, and then we're going to be working in both loops. So we're still going to skip this first stitch, but we're just going to work in both loops and single crochet. So those 2 stitches will be the last stitch of this wedge, or this this wedge. So the last stitch there. So we're going to work a single crochet decrease into that. So insert the hook, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then insert your hook in the very last color B stitch that's at the top of clue 3. Yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 3. And that is your last stitch of row 109, is joining that final edge to the top of clue 3. And from here, we're just going to be working back and forth across this stripe, creating the other edge wedge and squaring it off. Okay, so row 110, we're going to chain 1 and then turn to the back. And then we're going to also work a single crochet decrease. So we're going to be decreasing down here, both when we get to the end on the right side and at the beginning on the wrong side. So we're going to work a single crochet decrease over the first 2 stitches. So insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, insert your hook into the second stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through 3. And then we're going to single crochet in each stitch to the end of the row. 2. So that single crochet decrease is your first stitch. So that's the second stitch. Here's the third stitch. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 stitches in row 110. All right, row 111, chain 1, turn back to the front. We're going to skip the first stitch and then work a single crochet in each of the next stitches until we have 2 stitches remaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we are going to work a single crochet decrease 2 over these next 2 stitches. So our 11th stitch, go into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, go into that last stitch, yarn over, pull through a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 3. So that'll leave you with 11 stitches on row 111. Row 112, chain 1, and we're just repeating row 110 here. So we're going to work a single crochet decrease, turn to the back and work a single crochet decrease in the first 2 stitches. So insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop in the first stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop in the second stitch, yarn over, pull through 3. So that's first stitch, and then we'll single crochet to the end. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, so now row 113, we just repeat row 109. So chain 1, turn to the front, skip the first stitch, single crochet in each of the next, in each of the stitches until you have 2 stitches remaining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then our 8th stitch, we're doing a single crochet decrease. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. And that is the end of row 113. Row 114, chain 1, turn to the back. Again, we're just repeating row 110. So we work a single crochet decrease in the first 2 stitches. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. So that's our first stitch, and then we single crochet to the end. So this is 2, 3, 4, oops. Try it again. 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, next row, be 115, we chain 1, we turn to the front. We're going to skip the first stitch, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch until we have 2 remaining. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to single crochet the last 2 stitches together. So single crochet decrease, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. And then the row 116, chain 1, turn to the back. We're going to work a single crochet decrease to start. Insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. So that's our first stitch, and then we single crochet in each stitch to the end. So this is 2, 3, and 4. All right, row 117, we do a chain 1, turn to the front, and then we're going to skip the first stitch. We're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and then work a single crochet decrease. So insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over, pull through 3. And then row 118, we're going to chain 1, turn to the back, and we're just going to work a single crochet decrease. So insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. And then to complete row 118, we're going to actually work across, and you want to work a single crochet over each stitch, and basically you're going to add 108 stitches back. So if you count this stitch that you just made, that last single crochet decrease, as your last stitch, so if you think about the end of clue 3, we had 109 stitches across, so that's your last stitch. You want to get essentially 10 stitches in this wedge, and then 2 stitches in each of the strips of color. So 10 stitches in the wedge, 10 more stitches in the wedge, I should say. So we have the one here, and then add 10 more, and then you'll have 2 per stripe of color all the way across, including you should have 2 in the last 2, the last color, the end of the wedge, that ending wedge, you should have 2 single crochets in that as well. So I'm going to single crochet across the wedge here. I'm going to get my 10 stitches in, which should be, if you just find a row end and work in, it may be a little snug just because you have your turning stitches there too. It doesn't have to be perfect. 3, 4, 5, 6, oops, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, and then when you're doing the single crochets across the stripes, where you have you're going to either have that loop of yarn on your edge, or you will have where you carried the yarn up the edge, you just want to make sure that you get under, when you insert your hook to make the stitch, that you get underneath the carried yarn each time, so that it is not, so it's underneath the single crochet that you're making, or inside the single crochet that you're making, and not on the outside. It'll just look nicer. But you're just going to continue working your single crochets across, trying to get 2 in each of those stripes if you can. Sometimes it's a little hard to get it into the first, like the far edge, the left edge of each stripe, just because that's where your turning chain is. You want to try to stay kind of close to the edge if possible. You can go lower on it if you can. You just want to make sure that your stitches look pretty even. So again, it might be a little tedious to try to get into each of these. I like to try to make sure my loop around my hook is nice and snug before I make the stitch, so that I don't end up with tall stitches and small stitches. And then again, I just want to make sure that I'm getting underneath the carried yarn at the edge each time. So again, the goal of doing this, you want to get 10 stitches, so beyond the single crochet decrease that you work at the beginning of row 118, 10 more single crochets in that wedge of your color D wedge, and then 2 in each stripe of each color across, including 2 in the final stripe. And that should be 109 stitches. But you do want to keep count, make sure you have the correct number of stitches all the way across, so that when we start clue 5, you have the correct number of stitches to begin. All right. So don't cut your color D. You're going to still need that. But at the end of clue 4, you should have, sorry, get that all nice and straight so you can see it. That's basically what you should have. So as I mentioned before, it is going to kind of want to lean to this top corner on the left. Okay, this is something that we'll block out. All right, that's just the nature of the way that we're working these stitches, but you should be able to kind of pull it square. So when I say square, I don't mean into a square. I mean you should be able to pull it so that all of your edges are squared up and that you basically have a rectangle and that you don't end up having like a trapezoid that is severely leaning to one side. It's only going to block so much. So you should be able to make this edge fairly square. You should be able to make this edge fairly square and this edge fairly square just by kind of pulling it with your hands. Okay. So obviously you'll have a lot more stripes than I do, but when you're done, you'll have that color C wedge here at the beginning, and then the color D and color C wedges across, one more color D stripe, and then the color D wedge at the end. That's clue 4. If there's anything I didn't show you, anything I didn't show that you want to see, or anything you'd like to see slowed down or differently, just let me know. I'll do my best. Thanks so much. See you for clue 5.